I guess this is going to be totally Tu B'Shvat because we're starting something new here thanks to the righteous women of Toronto. I don't expect you to drive from Buffalo. But we're starting a new thing here, initiative of people who want a little more purpose for their role, especially women. Now we're approaching Chaf Shvat, the Yortzeit of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, whose name, my children will tell you, means living spice.
I did that.
Living spice. Chaya Mushka, the Rebbe, if the Rebbe was number 11, the Rebbetzin to the Rebbe was 22. 22 letters of the alphabet in Hebrew, the Aleph base. Welcome. We're getting bigger here. The French fries come out, and look how popular this year can get. I'm included, but I'm gonna. Yeah, please, if you partake of the French fry. These ones are blessed with special nutritional supervision.
Best restaurant in town.
So this is perfectly launched because this is a women's class, and the whole city shuts down for this holiday of the 22nd of Shvat, celebrating or marking the importance of the Rebbetzin and the righteous women of our times. What is the specific role? Why does the Rebbe say, echoing the words of the sages regarding the first redemption, that in virtue of the merit of the righteous women of the time, we were redeemed. And so too, the promise is in these times as well, which basically tells you that the mainstream has got it a little bit right when it comes to scrutinizing the patriarchy and understanding what is the unique thing that makes the female the 10th of the spheres, the final, the complete, the end game. What is the end game? It is exactly about Malchus, which is female. Yet, we have representatives from the male clan, like, for example, King David. King David represents Malchus. God made a divine soul shining completely through to the ultimate state of Malchus, which is receiving. You can only really receive when you're doing tshuva. When you're returning to Hashem, going back to the garden, that's where all the fruit is. That's where all the blessings are. The ultimate blessing being feeling your connection to your Maker. So King David was a man, but he represents what Malchus is. Malchus is presence in the physical world of complete synchronization with divinity. How you want to express what a king representing God in the world is going to do in this world. I think I better say L'chaim. What would it look like on earth? If you're going to put it in a pack of bones and other materials, what would it look like? So King David, we've spoken about what his appearance was.
Amen.
Malchus receives. It's female. Yehuda was in a submissive position where he had to appeal to his brother, Yosef, his little brother, who rose to the top of the entire world. And Yehuda, who David descended from, had to express humility. He also had to express humility when it came to his involvement with a certain Tamar, who only wanted to bring divinity into the world, her entire mission. Chaim. Welcome, Shana.
L'chaim.
We got to get a fourth wall in this sukkah. A fourth wall, just to create more of a hushed environment. Let me just. So Yehuda also had to come to a very low point. That's why I'm connecting this with tshuva. When he had to admit his involvement with Tamar, at the cost, he had to reveal his identity, that he was with this woman, and so therefore saving her from fears of an inappropriate relationship with somebody else. She was about to be burned at the stake, and he testifies for her that it was him. So that admission was very difficult to come to. The humility it took for the leader of the Jewish people he was the Av Beis Din, the top rabbi in town, had to admit in being involved with something that was personal and no one's business, but to save someone's life. So there's another example where it required so much tshuva to be able to make that right. And God says, as their sages teach, and Rashi brings down, that it came from him. When God set things up in a certain way where Malchus, the feminine here, has to be represented in the lowest place. That's where it starts. It has to start there, because when you lift up a building, you take it from the bottom. Everything has to be included. You go to the lowest point and you make that the hero. King David was not recognized. He was rejected. His father has an incredible story. The whole Davidic dynasty has this very strange transformative spirit, starting all the way to Rus and beyond. Rus came from a very sullied climate of culture, the descent of culture. Greatness came from the lowest possible place. The lowest possible place. So if the female is the N-word of the world, as John Lennon would say, it's to take the thing that represents the foundation, the earth, on which everything else stands. You take a king, a person, a human being, and because he's doing tshuva, he's so remorseful, he's so sincere, and all he cares about is bringing divine sovereignty into the world, is prepared to give away any personal vested interest and use everything that he has just to simply represent. What would it look if there's a kingly person in this world to reflect the kingship in heaven? What would it look like? Okay, that was not my topic, but I'm trying to help you understand what Malchus has to do with every person. When we speak about Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila, that the woman of valor is the crown of her husband, it's not a way to dispel anyone's suspicion of neglect. The Rebbe says here in these sikhs that the Frierdiker Rebbe was the first person of all the Rebbeim to start talking about women and what role they represent. This was the last generation. The Rebbes before that, which were about 5 in number, were exactly 5 in number, did not speak about that. You could go through their Chassidus, it's not the main focus. Whereas the Rebbe made this the entire project. Starting from day one, we celebrated the 11th of Shvat, marking the 10th of Shvat, when the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe's predecessor, was Nistalic and passed away, and the Rebbe took his place. And the Rebbe speaks about the absolute empowerment of every single person, and starting with the neglected female who's shunned in every aspect of our culture, and I hope that changes. There's no reason why it shouldn't. Yet we're said that that's the very crown itself, the crown jewels, the place where, the venue where God will show his ultimate sovereignty. It's also connected with the fact that there's a spiritual world and a physical world. And the physical world is meant to be crowned, as the ultimate important thing. And therefore, that's the lowest of all the sort of, as far as the sun rays can possibly reach, it stops at a certain point because the universe is only yay big. It's meant to be finite, even it's vast, as anyone with a telescope will tell you. Chaim? And it says that God is the power to say that's where the screen that is going to shimmer back is going to happen. The chazer, the returning light, the reflective light, it's going to happen at a certain frequency, and then everything is going to shine back and depend upon that perfection of that most superficial, the lowest of all the spheres. Yosef, Yehuda had to come to Yosef because Yosef represents the Yisaid. So you have the Davidic dynasty, which is the ultimate path that's going to assume the throne above even Yosef, who represents Yisaid, which is everything. Why do we say Malchus is everything? It's the last of the spheres, and the Yisaid is the ninth. It's the second last, because at the point of Yisaid, you have like one partsuf, one configuration, and then it's intended to communicate that out. So you have a listener. So you have, okay, there is a bit of a paradox in Malchus, in the female is a paradox, because on the one hand, she's a listener, but on the other hand, a king rules by his voice. We celebrated this Shabbos, Shiras Devera, the song of Devera, the song of Miriam, Maisha's sister Miriam, and how those are names to people that are so connected with people in my community. Miriam, Sarah, Devorah. These are the people that are exemplary, righteous people that happen to be female and therefore silent in a way. Rachel, which represents Malchus, Rachel. She is the lamb. Rachel means lamb, and it's the silence of the lambs is a biblical phrase. Before they're shorn, not before they're whatever he wanted to do with them, eat them with chopsticks or something. In that movie. Right? But the Rachel, the silence of the lamb was when Malchus, when the female is in exile. If it's not recognized as the crowning gem, like Rabbi Akiva and his wife Rachel, it seemed like such a neglect. He was away for how many years? 24 years? 20, what am I getting the 24 years in my head? Or 20 years probably. The 24,000 students is where the number is getting me mixed up. That he had, that they all died. And okay, I'm mixing two stories there. The point is that when he finally came back from learning with all these people that wanted to hear what he had to say, he had to face his wife, who was left behind with nothing. I always didn't understand why I couldn't just wire some money. I never could understand that, but I have one share where I actually tried to answer that. Anyways, I want to learn with you a couple things. That's all introductory. I want to learn inside with you a couple things that I have like a million highlights on because they're very, very important. They're all about the importance of women in our times, and they're about the names of those people I mentioned. Because we're just coming from Tu B'Shvat, and we spoke about there, it comes from the verse, Eretz Chita Sera Gefim Seina Barima in Eretz Deis Shaman Udvash. A land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey. So the last two, Zeis Shaman, it's praised separately. It says a land of, repeating that sort of introductory phrase. And it says Zeis Shaman is actually one thing. It's olive oil. And how that relates to Miriam, who is bitter like the olive that her name suggests. Miriam is marar, it's the bitterness, and we see the olive branch is famous symbol. It's taken by the dove back to Noah's Ark, and it represented the idea that this bird would rather be fed bitter, not bitter herbs exactly, but olives. I guess they're bitter compared to other things. And this dove would rather be fed by Hashem directly and in natural means than having to put up with Noach and him like tossing the rations for the day to the animals that he had to feed in the ark. So bitter, but from Hashem directly, without the intermediary of some know-it-all caretaker, is the end game. That's what it's all about. So Miriam, with her bitterness, was not about something that was irrelevant. It was about the suffering of her people. There's a Miriam in our midst that I wrote a little poem about called Shiras Miriam, because Miriam could come and go as she pleased. She was from the tribe of Levi, but every other person around her was suffering as slaves. And that caused her so much pain, this princess, growing up in the leader's household. It caused her so much pain that she was embittered and her name became representative of that, Miriam. But because of that, that's the merit of the righteous women, is in that sensitivity itself. The fact that she suffered most was because she was most sensitive. So Miriam is the sensitive person, in merit of which redemption comes. It says if there was one, this is attributed to the Alter Rebbe. You're so discreet, but it's like if there was a whisper from some ghost next door, I would probably hear it right now. When I usually teach, I started in my car. Didn't have to be a Tesla, I suppose. If I started in my Honda, would it make a difference? Well, it would be more impressive story. I started in a Honda. I did it. I had a Honda Accord, and my friends thought I was a legend for it. And then I got an upgrade, miraculously, because the Geula was in my favor. The lottery of life. Who knows? I'm amazed at the consistency of Hashem, who creates the world every second, and the people that you love, you can blink like in a strobe light, and bam, Hashem creates again and again. The people that are important to us. It could be that Hashem could blast a different reality every second, and that wouldn't be any real. There'd be no sequence of it. Why not? God creates the world every second. Fine. It's a type of compassion to let things actually have a natural, organic flow. That there is multi-universes. I agree with Dr. Strange about that. But there is one that actually happened. Any potential did happen because that's the justice inherent to the world that God creates. That there is sensitivity, there is listening to be able to speak. So Malchus, female, ends up being David's the child that comes out eventually from King David, or in this migration of his soul, incarnate into his descendant, who ends up becoming the eternal victor, the victory led to by this person who brings the entire world to an eternal state of divine sovereignty, which means that you don't make the mistakes that humans make all the time. David made mistakes, but he came back so wholeheartedly that his entire life was a testimony to a correction of that. And therefore, as the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, he was fueled to do it with more passion than anybody else. And we learned to be a Baal Tshuva from King David. Okay, I want to read some of this because it's so important. I probably think an hour would be good. What time? We started at 7. We can go to 8, unless someone has like a second course needs to be served or something. But that's just the plan from my end. No?
That's
If the Chaim doesn't wear away. Okay, so I wanted to address a few things, and these names are going to come up again and again to you understand the importance of the people around you. Firstly, one thing I just want to introduce, this thought I had, that when you give a tzaddik a name, someone that understands, even doesn't have to be a tzaddik, someone who understands the significance of a name, you know the person's potential. A name is something that draws the soul, which is beyond anything to do with the body, into the body. The name does that. That's why you call to someone by their name to get their attention when if they're dozing off on the road, you call their name. It wakes them up. So those names are the potential of the person because they had sort of archetypal precedent in the Torah. That the Bible speaks about people who are named certain things, and when you call a child by a certain name, it's considered a minor prophecy. That you know what this soul needs this body needs rather, to draw the soul into it. So you call it, I don't know, Rapunzel. Whatever soul is being born. Or is born, I suppose, L'chaim. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, I really wanted to introduce by saying that I didn't actually mean this to be a share. I meant it to be more of a conversation. I forgot to say that, but maybe I also I felt like maybe because I prepared so many things that I want to get to the topics. But I do want that. It could go on. I don't mind continuing the same topic even into a second round if we have to. But to address issues so it's a live thing. You guys can type in there too. It's like someone gave me their thumbs up 16 times. Okay, it's nice. It's encouraging. It's encouraging. Share it. Put it on your front door, and help me broadcast this thing to the universe. Okay, so you get the idea. This is a topic we're trying to understand. What the Torah wanted to tell us by giving us certain archetypes of people, what they represent. And here, just a little general addressing that issue without the names. That will be hopefully a bit next. So let's learn a bit. This is Sefer Sichos Tafshin Amez. I can take a picture of this and send it to you guys if you want to follow along on your respective phones.
Good idea.
Yeah? Can we get our photographer?
If it's in Hebrew or Yiddish, I'll be lost anyway.
This is actually in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Joy and bliss. It goes alternatingly in this book because the Israelis were getting.
Is there English? No.
They were demanding that printed in Hebrew. So this one's actually in Hebrew. Okay, this is just the first page of it. Can you please post that on some places? Thank you. So I'm going to just try and translate this on the fly. If I need to read the Yiddish, it's not because I'm trying to show off or waste time. I'm just trying to dig it all. Just trying to dig it all. Okay? This was said on Parshas Beshalach, which we just came from. It seems like it's about, what day is it today? It's like Tuesday already. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I thought it was still Sunday. There's no break. When do you get to have a Sunday and just feel like that was like a lifetime on the beach?
Next, it's coming up.
Please God, and may everyone have whatever winter breaks that they need to survive the thaw that's awaited.
Amen.
So, as in teaching, I'm just translating the fly what the Rebbe's words are. These were the final things the Rebbe said on anything, and the intention that the Rebbe gave, firstly to the idea of Mashiach in general, but really it's one and the same, is the idea of what a woman is meant to contribute to the world and to our psyche. How do you relate to Malchus? Is like a psychological meditation. So on the day of the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which was the 10th of Shvat, it includes the days that are before and after it, which we now find ourselves in. that it also had other days of passing that he marked by giving out teachings on those days in advance of his own death that happened to coincide. Firstly, the first Yud Shvat was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's grandmother's Yortzeit, and it ended up being his own Yortzeit. And also on Yud Gip, I'm getting the dates maybe a bit fuzzy right now, but also the Hemshech, the continuation of the Maimarim, referred to other righteous women, and the Rebbe identifies this. In other words, his mother, who was also Nifter on the day that the Rebbe, I think it was the 13th, that's what's coming to my head right now, of Shvat. And how that shows the importance. So the previous Rebbe was giving over the mantle of leadership to the Rebbe on the basis of dates marking the passing of righteous women. And how that becomes the flagship of the Rebbe's leadership. And so here that the Rebbe, the final words that we've had from the Rebbe is acknowledging that again and again, especially after, in 1988, I believe, the Rebbitzins passing. It became important, and leading up to the marking that passing in the Yortzeit, the Rebbe is addressing it here, and saying that the students of her path actually represent her own life, because that's what she lived for. And since the merit of the righteous women of our generation comes, in virtue of that comes the true and complete redemption, then she's literally, or hein b'chaim, it says, they, in plurals, referring to all these righteous women. That will literally be the case, especially shetzadikim v'tzidkaniyos kamim l'tchiyah, that the righteous men and women rise to the next stage of humanity in the world of tchiyah, of revival, the world of revival, the world of transformation, when even those who have become zombified or not alive anymore, the ones who dwell in the dust, will get up and sing miyad, immediately. So here we're saying that it starts with the righteous who have passed on. I sort of slanted that a bit off, because it seems to refer to just the average guy also, but that was special to the very righteous people, that when it says here they dwell in the earth, it can't mean anything negative. So that was probably not 100%. To emphasize this year in Tafshin Nun Beis, where it's about the kol, with everything, which that is a term we say, but bikol mikol kol, each one of the avos is addressed to as kol, as everything. Sheba mugeshes mailas avos, that speaks about the virtue of the forefathers. Shenamar bahem bikol mikol kol. Shehit ima kadosh baruch hu me'ein ha'olam haba, that they had a preview experience of the promised redemptive existence, the way things are going to be. They had that as like a sneak preview. Kol miyuchad b'gashas mailas ha'imohes, especially emphasizing here, we don't mean just the avos, we mean especially the imahis, the mothers of the Jewish people. Kol asher taimar alecha Sarah. Okay, this is where my recognition of Sarah, one of the contributors, the righteous women in this community, for sure. And for sure there's other Sarahs, that in this house there's another Sarah, probably right here, right now, trying to respect the space. And Baruch Hashem, you guys are being awesome. To give so much peace here, we have two dogs that go at it like dogs, non-stop. I mean, and And this is a very pleasant miracle. Baruch Hashem for that and all those involved to make that miracle happen. So we learn in a sense, supremacy of the voice of the female because of the supremacy of the imahos in the lives of the avos. That even God had to tell Abraham, everything that Sarah tells you, listen to her voice. And Rashi tells you, what do you mean her voice? It means she spoke with Ruach HaKodesh. We're talking about someone who had no agenda, had only transparent wisdom. So that wisdom specifically as it pertains to the continuity of the Jewish people, so that God doesn't just exist in place, like you have a holy place that Avram sets up tents, but that it will go through time. So the woman who's associated with body, the body is subject to the forces of time. The soul doesn't. It just stays the same, shining away in heaven all the time. Sometimes it pops down into a body for a bit, but it's still up there, in a higher frequency. So here, the paradigm, the reason why we have these great heroes of the soul, whose wives were greater than them, they were greater prophets, so they had to listen to them, is because Malchus, the female, will ultimately reign supreme. Yes, there's going to be a man sitting on a throne, but his precious, the crown, the thing that he exists for and recognizes as higher, kaviyachol, is the precious, is the other, the creation, the soul. So I've noted this before, that when it's a bit confusing, because on the one hand, the female with respect to Hashem is the soul to the Creator, but the female in the person, it's not described as the soul, it's described as the body. It says that the soul will be nourished by the body. The lowest becomes the ultimate shining and the ultimate holiness. So the Rebbe says that the significance of this, that you have these people who experienced pure spiritual bliss in the physical world before they actually got to heaven, or the end of humanity, called Olam Tchia, the world of revigoration, or something like that. You can't use the word resurrection because a lot of people can't imagine that. Even though we have science fiction before our eyes today, people can't imagine like a Rice Krispie made out of bone turning into a person, because the luz bone, the etzem luz, is a tiny bone apparently, and it's supposed to be indestructible, and it's supposed to be from which the tchia, the resurrection, takes place in all the people that lived before. So that is very hard to understand or imagine. That is the promise. You have to believe that that's true. I just don't know how to imagine that according to my. So not everything I have to understand. You can't understand the miracles of Hanukkah, for example, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Anyways, the point here is, I was pointing out as like a bit of a paradox. So I think I explained that enough. That in one hand, female is the soul, the creation, and all the souls are female next to Hashem, but next to, in themselves, the female aspect of the person is the body, and the soul is masculine in that sense. The soul shines, and therefore it's masculine, it's a giver.
We know a source that we discovered long ago where there was a female neshama trapped, right? Who needed the male neshama to come down?
Yitzchak was one of them. There's, I think there's a few others sort of cited. I don't want to get it wrong.
Every person has a male and a female?
Everyone has a potential to be properly aligned or not. And the Mitzvah Rebbe mentioned that in Chassidus, that the correction happens when they reach a very deep state of transformation, not trying to change anything about themselves, but that's just where they transformed into. You know, the rule according to Kabbalah is if you get the polarities opposite, like you could get more of a female polarity, like for example in Yitzhak, into a more masculine, like Rivka, I guess, they can have children. Rivka couldn't have children at first. There was some transformation there too. I think they both flipped over, both of them. That's totally a guess. But
Well, we learned it, I remember.
I didn't
Something
quite
had
finish
to
that
happen.
part.
Something happened, and that event brought down.
Oh yeah, there's the Littler's thing. That's what I think. That's what I wanted to get to. Thank you. That so a person can. Oh, I didn't get finished the point about when you can actually conceive is when you have reverse opposite polarities. But if you have two people with a couple when both of them are the same polarity, it's not. It can't conceive. So that's a reason why you'd actually want to do this Meshugat lahavdil from what they're doing in our crazy society. But there is, in other words, there's some source of the idea for you. For example, the main thing, like Sarah was considered indeterminate gender. That's a very interesting point. There was another thing about Sarah. I wanted to say some really other things about Sarah mentioned here.
Yeah, if it could.
But she was an islandess. She didn't have the capacity to have children. The miracle was that she completely transformed to the point of body. So the type of miracles that happen to righteous people is because they're transforming themselves by having access to their soul to such a degree that their body. She got young at that moment too, when she heard the news.
So, about Yitzchak on the Akedah? No, before that.
No, when she got the news of the birth, the future
Oh,
birth.
when she was laughing.
Yeah. And then she had a child called Laughter. Yitzchak means laughter, or we will laugh. It's the
So
promise
it's the
of
Malach
laughter.
that came down and gave her that determination. She has a female soul.
I'm not suggesting that it says that she did not have a female soul. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that sometimes you need transformation that can allow you to connect in a way that is productive. Mm-hmm. You have to, therefore, to find your Besherter, your Zivug, it's so important to so many people, you have to transform because you got to attract something that's meant for you. So you have to have a lot of good vibes. If you're gonna repulse your Besherter, what is the point of existing? It's like you're trying to, someone Chas v'Shalom falls overboard. If you don't catch him in the first few seconds, they're going to be way behind the boat. They never seem to get the idea. Why don't I just turn the boat around?
Big boat.
They never even notice. By the time you tell the captain, the guy's like a tiny dot amongst the ice ice caps or whatever they were, or the glaciers. Okay. So let's just continue. So the idea of connecting that year with which the acronym for it was Nun Base. So it's Niflois Bakol, and that got us to talking about when is a person considered kol everything. That's when you have an experience of redemption before. What does redemption look like? It means where you could be completely perfect, but if you're not connected to someone that makes you whole, someone that you could listen to and trust. So there's a lot of trust involved when God tells Avram, Shema B'Keila, listen to Sarah's voice. There's a lot of trust that requires. He was told he had to do something very unsavory. He had to kick out Hagar, his concubine. So that was very unsavory. And Avram was chesed, he was a giver. It was very hard for him. So God says, you got to listen to Sarah. She knows what she's talking about when it comes to certain things. I mentioned one before. I said it was the descendants, which was time, and also anything to do with, for example, wealth, physical safety, home, environment of light, and which is life, has to do with the female voice, which is called here Nekeva Tesevav Gever. The female surrounds the masculine, indicated by the kafas. You go around under the chuppah, and the crown, which is the next verse that the Rebbe quotes here. The woman of valor is the crown of her husband. And also, the Rebbe connected this with, interestingly, the next year, which is the next sequence for us. We're in Pei Gimel now. So this was, there was a sequence of events that the Rebbe predicts by connecting. I've spoken about other times. And here the Rebbe refers to the Nun brings the Gimel rather. So they went from Nun base to Nun Gimel, which spells Gan, the garden, which is relevant to these times when we were focusing on the teachings about I've come to my garden, when Hashem returns to live in paradise on earth as it was for a short time in the good old days. That's the complete redemption, when there will be the Shechina becoming a dira for Hashem. The Shechina will dwell, so it represents Hashem in the world. Okay, I want to switch topics for a bit. Maybe it's actually too much to do that. Because we're almost done this actually. Okay, we'll just do this quick. So the special instruction that comes out of all this has to do with that Shabbos, which we just came from, was the Shabbos of song, as is emphasized by the song of Miriam and the song of Devorah. Devorah, I meant to connect before. I don't remember if I did, with the honey. We said before, the land with olive oil and honey. We said it was the honey rather of dates. But also the bee, the Devorah means bee, which produces honey, and how that's the pleasure in learning the inner dimension of the Torah.
What is Shirat Devorah?
When's Shiras Devorah? In the Haftarah.
And what was it said, like, in what
It
form?
was from a victory in war. Devorah, we were supposed to get to all this today. I feel bad that we're like coming on the final stretch already. And there's so much to do.
So we'll look forward to the next.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because Devorah is instrumental in this too, and I wanted to speak about that. Anyways, what was your question?
At what point? Oh, she's saying it was after a war, after victory.
Yeah. It says that she was this very wealthy woman who had property in a lot of area, and she was the judge of the time because everyone saw her wisdom, and she sat under a date palm tree, the Tamer Dveira, which was because she wanted to express her commitment to Hashem, her yechidus. She was only in private quarters with Hashem, and she didn't want to, have the suspicion of whether she's going in private with anyone, even though she had to hear them out and be able to advise them, because she was the wisest person around. And she did that publicly, is the point, because a date palm has like one trunk and like a bunch of hair that shoots out from it, and it's like up high. Anyone who goes to Florida would probably know, God bless them all. and therefore there's a lot of open space to sit under it, and I guess to lean against it if you don't have anything more comfortable than that. So that's where she set up shop, and we'll get to that soon. Just let's finish a little bit of this. We'll say more inside, unless you have more questions, of course. I don't mean to.
No, I wanted to know what point and you told me. It was after victory.
Yeah, so they won. They won a victory when the man in charge did not want to go without her, he depended on her. So she predicts, prophetically, I suppose, that it's going to, was it Yehudis or Yah, that ended up finding the main bad guy and saving the day. Yeah. All the gore. If you don't put enough gore, then no one's going to watch it.
Right.
It's enough to suggest they have to show like when the Farbrengen magazine first came out, and I thought it was brilliant. They showed a Farbrengen table after people did like kulas over it and like smashed. There's like glasses left over there on the table by some popcorn or something on their premiere edition of this magazine. This like quarterly magazine that came out for Outreach. And that was really cool, because how are you supposed to understand what a Farbrengen is unless you see at least the aftermath? You don't want to show the guy because he's going to have like censored in front of his face. You don't want to like the guy that's dancing on the table at 3 in the morning. So you just show the table, what's left of the thing. They actually did that in our shul, so this is interesting because it's such a holy shul. It's a Rebbe shul. They put on the rabbi's table that he smashed when at a really intense Farbrengen. They got on top of the table and the whole wooden table smashed. They put it in like a bulletproof
They
thing.
told us in Kala classes that the main thing you need in your home is a very strong table legs.
Yes, that's so important. And look at this one. Look how flimsy these are. And you can't even dance on it because there's
Now
just
you
like
tell me.
there's
My dad danced
these
on
vents
this.
on it.
My father danced on this with your son.
Oh, that's true. I was terrified. that night. You have it, I think, on video. I think you have that on video.
I do.
I was terrified. I thought that either the chandelier was going to fall down or that the table would give. I didn't know which would happen, which would come from below or above.
It was amazing.
You know, I'm holding the table and they're dancing.
We're all holding it.
And what's that going to help? If you're holding the edge of the table, why don't you hold the middle of the table? It'd be more valiant to go underneath and hold it. You should, like they did with the elephants in Hanukkah.
Okay.
And they gave their lives to take down these tanks. They had plate mail all over them. How are you going to stop these things? They'll go through anything.
Like the best.
All the people like parking in front of fire hydrants and things like that, they're gone. The elephants will do it just like a tank. Anyways, we're going a little bit off topic.
Just a little.
I guess that happens. Why do you say l'chaim at a shir? I just think to launch something, you got to do it with a bang. You have to really feel the importance of this. This is a geula for me. So anyone who shows me so much honor, I'm very honored is what I meant to say. And thank you. So I have to close at least this topic that we say in the merit of the righteous women, we give us some suggestion of what that meant. The merit, we said, was the sensitivity that's like a natural gift. If you're like Miriam and you're embittered because people are enslaved around you, you want to help them. So she ends up helping them a lot. She was the brainchild of the birth of Moses, her brother, because she got her parents to come back together by being very shrewd and wise. Anyways, the point I want to leave you with is how it has a lot to do with faith and celebrating that faith. So to me, it gives me the greatest pleasure to see "Thank You, Hashem" emblazed in our entrance, because it will never leave my heart the gratitude I have for the miracles I see. So that type of faith exemplified by Miriam and her tambourine. Going out, why did they have tambourines? The men didn't. Why didn't they have their guitars with them? Why not? It's because they didn't believe they were slaves. They didn't think they would ever get out, so they didn't have any reason to celebrate. But the women had faith that it's not going to be forever. Hashem's going to take us out, and we're going to have tambourines. So when we get out there, I want to run around and make some noise to thank Hashem. It says that Chizkiyahu, Hashem wanted to make this king. He wanted to make him a Mashiach. In other words, to be king forever with peace and forevermore. and he didn't sing Shira. He didn't thank Hashem. I think it was for his refuah. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was. Which is, wow. So, Kiskio, Melech. And so therefore he lost that merit. The importance of singing to thank, to celebrate, is the exact thing that women have to blaze the trail, because I'm telling you, when I grew up, I did not grow up religious, and try and get your guys to come out on the dance floor, your guy friends. Try and do it. If there's a billiards table, men they could talk about all the sports statistics around, Anyways,
we know how to party.
There is the importance of partying in song and gratitude to Hashem. And Kishem Kishibitziz Mitzrayim Utachas Hayutzid Kani Yeshibeder Shekadosh Baruch Hu Eitzelam Nissim. There was no way out of Egypt. It was impossible. It was Alcatraz. And the righteous women said, we're going to go out with tambourines in our hands and we're going to dance, and it's going to happen through miracles. Why not? Hashem makes the world every second. Hashem could make it a little different, and it would be called a miracle. V'haitziu tupim, I guess how do you say it in Hebrew? Tupim?
Yeah.
Mimitzrayim. They took out tambourines from Egypt. Kach gamba gula megala ze'achra. And so too, in this redemption from this final exile, Shenishei Yisrael Tzadkanias, the righteous Jewish women, which means the ones that are listening to the shir, who would be doing, it's 8 o'clock at night, you probably want to put up your feet by the fireplace and chill out. And here you are, so I'm talking to you. They have to be certain, with absolute certainty, that immediately the true and complete redemption is coming. Ve'ad shemeschilus teichav, to the extent that it's starting immediately. Regai hagalas ha'achreinim, plural rigay. Pardon me. The rigay hagalas ha'achreinim, the final moments of exile, with song and tambourines and dances. Why are they doing this? Because the true and complete redemption is coming. When you have miracles, they were expecting miracles. When you have miracles, then it's for sure you have to sing and thank Hashem. I mean, I would sing, but I just try and do it with my guitar. So when my tambourine is my guitar. Baruch Hashem. I should thank Hashem for that redemption too. It's good to have both flavors. Okay, and this is important.
Even she's respecting,
And in more detail, together with tefillah, with prayer, that this is supposed to be expressed in, this thankfulness for Hashem that the redemption is coming, and the request from Hashem that the redemption should unfold immediately, that this is from the feeling of the tsar and mariras, the embitterment for anything but redemption and transformation and success and health, whatever miraculous things people need in their life. Or it shouldn't have to be miraculous, but we're still expecting that. These women were expecting not just a squeaking out of exile in Egypt. They wanted to celebrate. So they had tambourines, they didn't have a shield or something to run away from the Egyptians. That's it. The men actually had weapons. They might have had shields. So that might be wrong. This says that they carried their matzahs on the back. They probably had their shields somewhere tucked away. And one time I tried to cross the border and they said, you got to take out this and this stuff.
Was it matzah?
No, it was property that didn't belong to Canadian citizens. So they had to take out our moving truck when we come to there with all of our stuff, like a grand piano. We didn't have any grand piano then. But a lot of stuff. So you have to take the stuff in the bottom of the suitcase somewhere. I gotta find What am I supposed to do? I just said, you gotta let me go through. I just stood there and I said, you have to let me go through. And they didn't throw me in jail, they let me through. Sometimes you have to just expect miracles to happen. They can tell you you're not going through. You say, I have to go through. Hashem will help me. I did not let my equilibrium get me a little too phased. I didn't lose my swagger too much. There was no one to lose it to.
I have a story like that. Another Sarah that we know. She once went to South Africa, and she has like 7 kids, right? And I don't remember what the story was, but 1 or 2 of them didn't have like their passports or the right passports, and they were freaking out because they were worried that she was worried that they would think they were trafficking her kids, right? But she stayed calm, right? But she stayed calm, and the passport person said, are these all your kids? And they looked and they said, oh, never mind, I can tell these are all your kids, just go. She just went on faith, and she's like, oh, I don't even need to
She's
see
seen
no
it
papers.
before a Jewish family.
It was so funny, yeah.
That's so cute. Okay, so in place of that, I think the Rebbe's going to say that the bitterness, the sensitivity, Miriam al Shem HaMirur, the word Miriam means the embitterment that she felt for the enslavement of her people. Al Arichas Agalas, here the pain is over great length. I mean, the first exile, or the last exile I should say, was 70 years. Now it's way in the big numbers. So that's supposed to be embittering us. Why are we still in exile? We're supposed to be promised all these things, and what are we doing here? It's still dreaming about it. Shabali de bitui ba tzaka mekerev leva. I'm like, ad masai. That should bring someone to this demand of what is going on. Just this demand of Hashem to end the suffering. Chadurus hein gam be'eka beregish hasimcha. And how do you express that? Mainly through celebrating, through being happy. So the Baal Shem Tov, who started with joy and love, is totally the Rebbe's artillery. He's just disseminating the Baal Shem Tov's Chassidus in the most culturally relevant way. I mean, he's not talking about like what's going on downtown this weekend, but I mean in the sense that, I mean, the Rebbe addressed even, for example, the hippie movement. That's the theme of this year's Purim. Yes. So I really hope that you get a chance to Purim with us.
Purim, okay.
I read, was it 2 weeks ago?
That was
2 Shabbos ago.
Great, yeah.
There was a pamphlet in the show that was talking about what did the Rebbe say about the hippie movement.
Right.
And he said that those are extreme, super spiritual people.
Right.
And we just need that need a little bit of discipline, he said in that pamphlet. I don't know if that was the Rebbe's word, but that was the translation in the pamphlet. And instead of just saying, oh, this is bad, this is wrong, you should never associate, he sent his shluchim to stand outside Woodstock, and they came up with mitzvah LSD. Let's start davening.
Let's start davening, folks. You hear that?
Look at the Rebbe. Instead
Righteous
of saying,
women of our
this is
time.
horrible, don't ever approach, don't ever look, don't ever think, don't ever... Said, no, let's bring it and put a little bit of our discipline inside. It's going to be great. This is great.
Right. I think he said, didn't he say something like, it's good they're questioning what they were brought up with?
Yes.
Right? They're questioning. That's good. That's good.
They're searching.
Right.
They want
Right.
more.
They're searching. Right.
There has to be someone to talk to, and I went through that journey myself. There was no one to talk to until I found a yoga guy that stretched me good. And then I found a philosophy professor that was a shliach of the Rebbe, lahavdil.
Wow.
I mean, lahavdil from the yogi.
Right.
I mean, the yogi was really, didn't say any, he had some, I think, ideas about some things, but he never espoused anything that was very offensive or from different religions. What's that?
Was he a Buddhist? A Buddhist Jew?
No, I don't think he was Jewish. He had a lot of my family influenced, and to be healthy and to stretch your body and to be open-minded about using your mind for spiritual pursuit. So there's like a philosophy component there. Anyways, but just to finish this off, it's just like a few more lines. So you're supposed to express this admasai, this complaint of how long can exile, not by screaming out. He says it does come to expression through screaming out, but what's it permeated with? It's permeated. You're screaming out, which is what I did on David's Vort that we had hosted, which turned into a really amazing celebration for lots of things, especially health. And I was screaming out. It wasn't Ad Masai. It was filled with joy. The Simcha Gdela B'Yeser, such a great joy, Shebali de Bitui Bashira, that comes out as song. So it's just to scream like a barbarian is not enough. You actually have to make some sense of it, and it has to be pretty. Mitzad Gdela B'Tachan, of the great certainty that here Mashiach's coming, and he's already here, the Rebbe says. Ukfarba. So take that to your kfar and celebrate it.
Beautiful.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yasher Kach.